Hey everybody, welcome back to Comic-Booksters, your one-stop shop for comics past, present, and future. As always, I'm Nerdcore, he's Obi the Boy.
Welcome back to Comic-Booksters.
Hey, and we're never in the same room anymore. We're like states away all the time, so this is refreshing.
Yeah, it's different. It's nice.
So today, we're going to focus on Superman. Specifically, we're going to do what we are calling Rebirth Report Cards, and this will be our first one focusing on the Superman titles, particularly Superman and Action Comics, though I know you've been reading some of the other ones.
Yeah, I have. Like Supergirl and Superwoman.
That being said, with Superman Reborn having wrapped up the big 4-part crossover between Superman and Action Comics, almost at the year point of DC Rebirth, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to be able to do this. And let's talk about what set up this big crossover. So far, the Superman book itself has focused on Clark and Lois raising their son John and his transition into Superboy, and pretty much his growing pains as a half Kryptonian, half human, growing up, and how his powers are developing and whatnot. Something that's really amazed me about the Superman title, the main Superman title, is that it's drawn from a lot of what the New 52 would have called the Dark Line and Grant Morrison concepts and Darwin Cook concepts, and done a really neat melting pot with all of those. Between the team-ups with Frankenstein, the Superman Annual with Swamp Thing, Dinosaur Island, Multiversity. All of those concepts were really cool and have played off, Superman not only as a father, but as sort of the elder statesman and core of the DC Universe, which is something that I don't feel we've really seen in a very long time.
No. Well, I mean, they kind of push Batman. They're still trying to push Batman as their core of their universe. But and you know me, as Superman guy, I always think that he's the core of he's their superhero. He is the ultimate superhero. His name is Superman.
He's the one that started it all. And, while I am more of a Batman guy, as we all know, I do appreciate Superman, his place and legacy within the DC Universe, and it's really nice to see him have an opportunity to return to the forefront here. I think the Superman title has done a wonderful job at doing that so far, and I know you've really liked how it's focused on family and him raising John and whatnot.
Yeah, because you can, as being a father myself, you can look at some of the stuff, the issues he has dealing with, especially with him having to transition between the fact that his son has some of his superpowers, but not all of his superpowers, because he gets hurt, but he shouldn't get hurt. So they're not quite sure what's going on there. I like seeing all of these issues that are arising, and they're trying to conquer one step at a time.
And another thing that I really liked in regards to the Superman titles, especially with the family dynamic, is the fact that this is kind of the first real status quo change to the Superman books in 15 years, 20 years, probably since Lois and Clark actually got married.
Yeah, definitely since Lois and Clark actually got married.
And in that sense, it's actually made them more interesting again. Say what you will about, JMS's run back before the New 52 started, any of the runs in the New 52, but part of it really just seemed like there was nothing new and engaging. When they did the New 52, it reset everything, and, it split up Clark and Lois, and it just felt like all that development was shoved out the window. But instead, now with Rebirth, and I think to their benefit, they've been allowed to build off of what's come before, tie it all together, and we'll get into that more as we talk into Superman Reborn. But it's character development. It's not a reset. It's building off what's come before, and in that case, it's made me care about Superman again, because it was really hard for me to care about him when they tossed everything out the window and said, nope, none of that ever happened. Now this is where we're at, and that kind of threw me off of Superman for quite a while.
Yeah, it was hard to read Superman. I didn't really enjoy much of the New 52 Superman. I think that was one of the first New 52 books that I dropped, actually.
And there were some good creative teams on there. I mean, Action Comics with Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder, that was great stuff. I felt like they were always interrupted and, with a giant crossover storyline, which was problematic. But
yeah, I've been going back and reading some of it in trade, picking up at cons and stuff. And yeah, there is some really good stuff. But there is some weak sauce in there also.
There's certainly that. Now, as much as I love the main Superman title, I've been really digging Action Comics. And that may just be Dan Jurgens was writing the books when I started reading when I was a kid. He's back on Action Comics now. But some of the things that really drew me to that, I'm a huge Lex Luthor fan.
Yeah.
And Lex plays a pivotal role in that book. But there's also, a mystery to it because you had this false Clark Kent that was running around during the New 52. Clark was outed as Superman. Then Superman died. The pre-Flashpoint Superman is, I guess, what we'll call him. He showed up. And then this new version of Clark Kent shows up that's completely separate from this version of Superman that's now running around. And everyone's kind of confused. How did this happen? And in essence, it kind of puts the genie back in the bottle as far as Clark's identity.
Yeah, it did. That helped them out a lot, I think. But it also made Lois's life a little more miserable.
Yeah, because, she's kind of trying to slide into the place of the New 52 Lois Lane, who we'll touch on in a bit when Obi here talks about Superwoman, what happened to her. But she's trying to slide into her place, and, of course, this new Clark Kent starts making advances towards her. And just kind of the similarities between him and her husband really start to creep her out and makes for a very inconvenient situation.
Yeah. It was quite interesting to read how that all panned out.
But during that course, we also get the trial of Lex Luthor, where because Luthor has sort of inherited this position of Darkseid's on Apocalypse, he is now being headhunted by intergalactic bounty hunters trying to prevent the apocalypse. He claims that he would never do such a thing, but it's Lex. It could go either way at this point. So between that mystery and the focus on Lex, I've really been digging Action Comics. They started off their run with Doomsday, who I've never been a huge fan of. However, as far as, a bombastic way to get somebody interested, knockdown, drag out fight with Doomsday, certainly you can go worse ways. Now, all that being said, all of that does come together into what was Superman Reborn, the big crossover between Action Comics and Superman. Now, we've been shelling out a fair bit of story here beforehand, but we're going to now preface this with a spoiler alert. But first, before we do that, let's jump over to Obi here and tell us about some of the side titles leading up into this.
Okay, I did sort of stop reading Supergirl just because, I don't know, I didn't put it on my pool. I had to drop something, and that was it. Superwoman, though, I'm on board for. I really liked it from when it started. It started out with Lois meeting Lana back on a farm, and what happened was they both got touched by the New 52 Superman dying, so they absorbed some of his power, and they had to kind of use the power equally, or it was going to go bad, and Lana refused to use it, which ended up killing Lois, the other Lois that was on the Earth initially. So now that's why Lois was trying to sneak in in her place. But now you have this. It's a weird dynamic because no one really knows that. Some people know that Lois is dead, but not all of them know that Lois is dead. And Lana is somewhat dying because the Superman power is slowly eating her human cells. They can't quite figure it out yet. They're on their way to get saved by Superman at the Fortress of Solitude.
By they, you mean Lana and Steel.
Steel, yeah. Lana and Steel.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because, Lois and Lana have now struggled with Kryptonian powers being transferred into them, which also kind of mirrors, but is not quite as tragic as what's going on with John, as far as his powers not really necessarily developing the way they should be.
Right, yeah.
So, once again, this all brings us into Superman Reborn, and again, hard spoiler alert here going forward to a recent storyline in Superman and Action Comics. So, right before Superman Reborn kicks off, Clark Kent tracks down Clark and Lois and John.
Yeah. Well, they set that up a little bit before that too, with it starts at the trial of Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
When he spots them, all of them on the building at the same time.
Yeah. But he finally tracks them down to their farm in Hamilton County, which as far as I can tell is north of Metropolis, correct?
Yeah. An hour, I think they say. It's an hour north.
Yeah, it seems weird. I'm struggling to figure out where Metropolis is at this point, because I know that, at one point it was located in Delaware, and now I feel like it's located somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's in Kansas. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere near Kansas, Indiana, something like that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I like that. I always like the idea of Metropolis as an East Coast city where Superman went and got far away from home. But that being said, that's neither here nor there. So he tracks them down.
It is a different Earth.
Yeah, that's true. You'd think the geography would be kind of the same. Anyway, so
I'm not that guy.
So he tracks them down to their farm in Hamilton County, and he, kidnaps John. The house goes up in blue flames, which that color comes to signify something much deeper later within the story arc. But so he kidnaps John. They go to Metropolis, to Clark's old apartment that he's never lived in on this earth. And lo and behold, they find out that Clark Kent is actually Mitzias Pidlick in disguise. Now, Mitzias Pidlick had apparently been held prisoner by another character that's kind of at the root of the whole Rebirth storyline, Mr. Oz. Could be Ozymandias, could be someone else entirely. I'm not entirely certain. But he was angry that Superman never came to save him and disguised himself as Clark Kent and made him forget who he was in order to evade detection of Mr. Oz, in the process putting Superman's identity back in the bag.
Yeah, he really did hold a grudge on... Because he thought that Superman would realize that he wasn't fighting him
right, because he didn't show up every 90 days.
Every 90... Yeah.
For all Superman knows, maybe Mitzi got tired of his games, as unlikely as that may sound. But
it would be the best thing to happen to Superman.
Most likely. I mean, I know I'd be very relieved if certain people didn't show up in my life every 90 days.
I don't show up in your life every 90 days.
Debatable. Anyway, so Mr. Mitzias Pidlick now holds this grudge. He really does blame John as being the baby of the family, therefore taking up his position, and decides that he is going to make Superman and Lois forget that they ever had a son. He does it really well with Lois, but Clark's a bit more difficult.
He's a hard-headed...
He whisks them away to the fifth dimension. They have to fight their way through a... I don't want to say upside down, but insane version of the Daily Planet.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And John starts to notice that there's these red energy beings floating around. He utilizes their power and merges them with his parents, and the New 52, Superman and Lois, burst back into existence, overwriting that which is his parents. And they also have no idea who John is.
Yeah, that was really weird. That was quite a confusing thing going on there. I thought it was cool that he was able to realize to pull these things together. But then when it became the New 52 ones, I was like, oh, what's going to happen now?
And I'm not going to lie, I was a little disappointed at that point, because I honestly could have gone forever without seeing the New 52 Superman and Lois ever again.
I mean, that's a little harsh, but I can get it. I do understand that.
It just seemed so boring in comparison.
I mean, he was a cardboard copy of I guess technically he's the cardboard superhero now, but he was a cardboard copy of a cardboard superhero.
That's true. But in story, how can this all be? And the answer is this. Apparently, when the New 52 was created, Superman was split right down the middle. This is Superman Red and Blue done better. So, the blue Superman was the pre-Flashpoint Superman. The red Superman being the New 52 Superman. So, being split apart, now they've been re-solidified, but none of the history has really traveled with them. It's just completely the New 52 Superman. Until John realizes that there are blue energy beings still floating around, and manages to convince Superman and Lois from the New 52 to believe in him. They merge with these blue energy beings and become one whole Superman and Lois Lane.
Yes.
They remember John, they remember everything, and the interesting part about this is that it actually overwrites both the history of pre-Flashpoint and New 52, therefore showing that the Kents got married, that they had this son, everyone at the Daily Planet knows who John is. It's kind of an interesting take.
Yeah, it was, but I really did enjoy it, the ride to the end of that. I like that they made John the hero of this story.
Which, I think that also, they really needed to, because he's become such an integral part of, what's keeping these books interesting.
It's true.
So, that being said, Mitzias Pidlick decides that he's wreaked enough havoc. He doesn't want to get detected by Mr. Oz again and get whisked away, so he returns to the fifth dimension, and the Kents return to their normal lives. Or what is the new normal. It really reminds me of Infinite Crisis, with how it just kind of merged all the timelines and everyone now remembers everything. It tied it up in a nice, neat little bow. I'm kind of interested to see how it works as far as, with other characters such as Batman, Flash. Do their memories adapt?
Oh, no.
We might find that out in the button.
I'm going to say I'm thinking we're figuring that out in the button.
But what I'd like to do right now is, since we are terming this Rebirth report cards, is I'd like to talk about, where these books have excelled and where they've struggled so far. So, what do you want to do? You want to start with the bad, or you want to start with the good, Obi?
I guess we can start with the bad, and then lead into, I don't really have too many bad things to say.
All right. Well, then let's start where these books have been struggling. For me, I've loved Action Comics through and through. I felt like the opening story arc ran a little bit too long with Doomsday. And I think that the only real weak link for me as far as the Prime Superman title was, I feel like the Multiversity arc didn't really, for such a bombastic big concept, didn't really have that bombastic big feel to it. So I was kind of underwhelmed. I got tired of the opening Action Comics storyline, and I was a little bit underwhelmed by, I believe it was called Multiplicity, was that storyline in Superman.
Yeah, Multiplicity.
The rotating artists, sometimes they can be hit or miss. If it's Patrick Zurcher and Doug Mankey or, Pat Gleason, I feel like it's spot on. But when it comes out of their art very suddenly for like a filler issue, that I notice of. But I feel like that's just, how a bi-weekly schedule works with these books.
Yeah, I can't say that it's been as bad as some of the Flash art, but there's been some poor spots, I guess.
What about you? What have you been struggling with these?
My biggest thing was getting over Lex Luthor being like the main arc of Action. So once they got to the trial of Lex Luthor and kind of made it reasonable for him to be the center of that, I was cool with that. That's been my biggest... I don't want to read a Lex Luthor book. I want to read more Superman.
Blasphemy. But as far as, where these books have excelled, for me, it's great storytelling, great character development like we haven't seen in quite some time with the Superman books. When Mankey or Gleason or Zurcher are the ones doing the art on these books consistently, I never miss a beat with them. Great mystery, both with John in Hamilton County and with this new Clark Kent that ended up being Mitzias Pidlick. Really just brilliant twists and turns, and there's never a dull moment in these Superman books now.
No, they are very good books. They are spot on Superman books, and they are good, which has been a long time since you could say that for both series going on at the same time being good.
So Superman catches a lot of flack for being a Boy Scout, but quite honestly, if you're ever curious to check out a Superman book, this is the time to jump in. This is, brand new ideas, thrilling stuff coming out from it, and, I can't highly recommend it enough.
Yeah, me either. Though, going back to that Boy Scout part, I did like that he did stand up for, like, he acknowledged that Lex probably is bad, though Lex has never done anything bad, and when they were trying to get rid of him during the trial of Lex Luthor, and when he was just like, nope, I'm leaving. I thought that was great. I was like, that's a very Superman thing to do. Be like, no, you're not gonna do this. I'm just not gonna let this happen.
Yeah, it was a great moment. Any closing remarks?
You should be reading Superman. If you're not, I think both of them, the first arcs are in trade. Even the second might be in trade. I know the Green Arrow second one's already out, so...
Yeah. Well, I know both the first volumes of Superman and Action Comics have hit. So
you should definitely pick them up. I would say read I'm not sure when the Superwoman comes out. I think that of the Superman books, and I really like Superman, that's my favorite one to read, is Superwoman.
That'll do it for this edition of the Comic-Booksters. Please like, share, and subscribe. As always, I'm Nerdcore. He's Obi the Boy. Keep reading, preferably
reading.
Superman.
Please be Superman.